afternoon. I'm Scott Lowe. I'm here today at Gridstore headquarters where I'm joined by George Symons, CEO of Gridstore, and Don Chouinard, Director of Product Management. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me here today.
It's a pleasure. Appreciate you coming by.
We're thrilled to be here, and we're here to talk about something maybe a little bit different. A lot of times when people hear about virtualization, VMware jumps to mind. You guys have taken a little bit of a different tact. And you are a Hyper-V company. I mean, to a point. You provide full support for Hyper-V with your product, and that's your first and foremost attention.
That is.
So to give me an idea about the decision process that went into that. I'm a lover of Hyper-V. I like the product, and I'm really interested to hear where you guys started with that.
Great question. When we looked at the marketplace and we looked at our technology, we had to make the decision. You know, our strength is in virtualization. Clearly, the market leader is VMware. But what we have is a software-defined storage solution, and we put a virtual controller on the server. Well, we were looking for a good open environment where we could actually load that virtual controller at the hypervisor or operating system level. And Microsoft Windows and Hyper-V turned out to be the best open environment for us to do that. We could install this as a driver. We could fit into that Windows environment very cleanly, and we could get all of the advantages we wanted from, interestingly, the Windows storage technologies that are there. So when we looked at the market, we also looked at our competitors, and it's true, almost everybody is focused on VMware. We looked at companies that were focused on Hyper-V, and there weren't any.
Right.
So we felt we could offer a real differentiated solution that fits into the Windows environment extremely well and takes advantage of all the technologies we have while leveraging all the technology that Microsoft has put into Windows.
You know, I think that Microsoft, I mean, I play in both sides of the fence, and I have to be careful sometimes. I'm a vExpert and an MVP Hyper-V, and a lot of times when I'm with my VMware friends, I hear a lot of snickering around Hyper-V and Microsoft in general, but Microsoft is a force, and,
right.
and Hyper-V is growing in market share. But as a result of that decision, because everybody else wasn't doing it, did that present any significant challenges for your and your development teams?
Great question. It's interesting. I think you hit it right, which is Hyper-V has reached really a solid position. This is not untypical to Microsoft releases where you sort of wait for the third release, R2.
Right.
We're there.
Right.
It's a good product. We did have some interesting challenges, not from a technical point of view, from a business point of view. Everything from my board, wanting to make sure we were making the right decision,
right.
Not going after the big market. The place it wasn't a problem was with the analyst community. As I explained to them, we're going after the Hyper-V market. It took all of them a matter of seconds to think about it and say, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was actually good reinforcement. One of the interesting challenges has been from a sales point of view. Mm-hmm. Right now, Microsoft, we just saw some numbers from IDC that showed 31.5% market share for Hyper-V, which has been growing. It's great.
Yeah.
But when you're calling, you're going to run into 6, maybe 7 VMware customers for every 3 Hyper-V customers, so it's harder to find. Right. That's been the biggest issue for us, is doing the lead generation, finding people who are focused on Hyper-V. When we find them, we have great conversations. They see the value. It was very clear we made the right decision.
Now, what about technically on the product management side? Has that decision created any issues for that side of the house, or is it basically we have a greenfield opportunity here?
The driver is a mini store port driver. Those are easy to write. There's not a lot of code. So it's really, our added value is the ability to take multiple standard servers and tie those together into a powerful storage system. Technically, implementing on Windows is really great because you get the power.net working for you.
Right.
So your velocity of innovation is very great. Compare this to other storage companies that are doing embedded code, maybe in C and assembly language down there embedded into the storage system. That velocity of innovation is terrible. Mm-hmm. So we're enjoying an excellent velocity of innovation and support with all the Microsoft tools, being able to use all of the .NET libraries to get everything done quickly.
That's great.
Yeah.
And as we look at, Microsoft, I think, has made some pretty brilliant strategic moves when it comes to the future for Hyper-V. One being Replica, Hyper-V Replica, and two being Azure. I mean, can you speak to those things a little bit and how you feel those are going to help Microsoft as far as Hyper-V goes in the future? Which, if Hyper-V does well, you do well, right?
Exactly. You want to start with Azure? I think that's a great place.
Sure. Yeah, Azure is great because I can use the exact programming methodology that I'm going to use to create a local program. I'm in Visual Studio, and then I just right-click and say Publish to the Azure cloud. Now it's running up in the cloud. It's absolutely fantastic, the seamlessness between the two, because they're both built on .NET. So you get that commonality. Now for our customers, they'll have on-prem applications, and they're using hopefully on-prem Gridstore equipment to store that.
All are.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But when the going gets tough and you need to elastic out because there's a big job that's just going to run for a certain amount of time, isn't it nice that you can take these Hyper-V VMs, shoot them up into the Azure cloud, put them behind a load balancer, load them up, they'll automatically replicate out to the correct number that's needed. All of your SQL Server databases that you're using in the local case for your corporate applications, you just tie right into SQL Azure, you just change the connection string, everything else works.
Right.
So, these synergies with the Azure cloud are something that are really very, very exciting for the application development community and for the system administrators. If a big job came and you needed to order physical on-prem equipment, get it in, lug it, tug it, plug it, get it up and running, it could be 30 days, 45 days.
Or longer. I used to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, we have this 40 server farm we need to build out, and it was before VMware hit the market.
No.
It took more than a day.
Yeah, and if they're high-run applications that are always going that are important, on-prem makes a lot of sense, and you can use Azure for a DR with the Hyper-V replicas, which is always nice. But then it's always nice just to be able to run applications up there on occasion.
Very good.
Just following up on that, you mentioned Hyper-V replica, and I think that's really a telling point as to Hyper-V becoming the business critical host for the applications. So Microsoft has recognized that, I think, and has put a very solid product there for DR, so that not only do you, of course, back up your data, but you are able to have business continuity, and it's very seamless, fits into that Hyper-V environment, works, asynchronously, so you have the distance, you can set up your DR location, across the road or across the country. So.
Another thing that we've seen that's new in Hyper-V is Generation 2 virtual machines. I mean, these are virtual machines that have basically ejected all vestiges from the physical world. Sort of like the Matrix, I guess, right? When you think about it. Have you guys had a lot of experience with what that means for a user that's looking at Hyper-V versus, is there more opportunity for density on a host? Is there better performance? What does that mean for
that's the promise. I don't have any data from our customers on that, but that's certainly the promise of Gen 2 because the legacy I/O is really the worst thing to have to virtualize. You have to emulate it. And things were getting jammed up over there. So it should result in higher consolidation ratios and higher performance for applications, which I'm certainly looking forward to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and back to the replica up into the Azure cloud. When you've got 10 local Hyper-V virtual machines and they're all running and you're replicating up into Azure, that's into a storage account. That's cheap. That's just web storage. They're not alive yet. Not until the bad day comes when you need to fail over to the Azure cloud will Microsoft crank up each of those VHDs as a virtual machine. Now you're going to get a bill for that because you're running on quad-core, whatever size processor you specified for those virtual machines to be running on, but you're happy to pay the bill because it was a DR situation and here everything's running smoothly. Saves the business.
And theoretically almost, something like that could be covered by insurance. When you really think about it. And so basically you're going to pay a small monthly bill for the storage, and then if something happens, your insurance company is going to potentially pay for because they're helping you recover.
Yeah. So our customers have a choice. Some of them have 2 sites and have bought 2 grids. So they're replicating from the primary site to the other, and they've each got each other's back that way if they're doing active-active. The second way is a managed services provider who has a large grid in place, who's doing it for a number of their customers, or just go straight to the Azure cloud. So there's a lot of choice for customers in how they're going to make this DR go.
Very good. Gentlemen, thank you very much. This has been a good discussion. I'd like to talk more at some point about Hyper-V with you guys. But thank you for having me here today.
It's really our pleasure. Appreciate you coming by. Look forward to follow-on conversations.
And thank you for watching.